give a round of applause to Jesse, right? Cool. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm the last speaker tonight, so I'll try to keep it quick. I'm going to be talking about kind of the national successes and what this tour and kind of these issues mean in terms of building resistance as a region and furthering the movement building that we've been doing over the last few years. But before I get into that, I wanted to introduce myself. I have not had a chance to have a lot of conversations with you all. So kind of give you an idea of kind of what brought me to this space. When I was 13, I started my freshman year of high school, and about 5 or 6 weeks in and several Scantrons later, I realized that that style of education wasn't going to work for me. And so one night I snuck downstairs and used my parents' dial-up desktop computer, and I did a little bit of research, and I found a school that took high school girls backpacking through South America. And even though my parents couldn't afford it, I applied for a scholarship, and a month later I was transplanted from the wheat fields of Kansas, where I'm from, to the Amazon rainforest, where you look up and you can't see the tops of trees, and dragonflies are the size of New York City pigeons, and every night when I would go to bed I would lay under my bug net kind of like shivering because you could hear panthers hunting. It was a really amazing experience. And while we were down there, we were studying kind of the socioeconomic situation of each of the countries that we were in. And I remember I was reading this book about a tribe called the Waorani and their battle against a big oil company, Texaco. And in this book I was reading about the billions of gallons of toxic waste that were being dumped into their water streams, the millions of gallons of conventional crude that were being dumped on their territories, and the violence that was ensuing there, in particular, the violence against their women. And I was reading this book, sitting at a hostel in Quito, Ecuador, and this guy comes over to me and says, "Yo, did you know that the man on the cover of your book is actually sitting at a table over there?" And I looked over, and sure enough, it was Moy, the indigenous resistance leader that I was reading about in this book about their fight against Texaco. So I ran over, 13, big-eyed, kind of introduced myself in the little Spanish that I had picked up while I had been down there. And the next thing I knew, I was sitting across from the table with him having dinner. And he was telling me all about his story and trying to build up enough publicity to get money to sue Texaco and kind of that fight for litigation, and also, you know, his personal story about what this was doing to his community and to his people, and in particular to his family. And at the end of the conversation, I looked at him and I said, "You know, Moy, what can I do?" And he looked at me and he said, "You need to go home and you tell your friends and your family and your government what's happening to my people." And the next morning, I was writing about this in my journal, and I kind of realized, you know, this was a moment that I could keep with me as a transformative experience, or I could decide to do something about it. And so I've been organizing around oil extraction and exploitation ever since. That's what brought me here on this tour. That's what brought me to the work that I'm doing. In particular, that's why I work with engaging young people on these issues and empowering us to really lead on this fight against climate change. And after years of organizing by people like Moy, Texaco, which is now Chevron, had to pay the largest settlement in history to an indigenous community in the Amazon. And it's, you know, not the end of their fight, but it's a step in the right direction. And as we all know from being in this room together, hearing all of the amazing stories and struggles that are happening right here in Wisconsin and all over the Great Lakes, you know, this isn't something that's just happening somewhere else. It's happening right here in our backyards and in our communities. And we know that in order to fight back, we need to build, you know, a movement that can really take on the largest industry in the world. So I'm going to run through kind of what that looks like, right? How this movement has been building over the last 4 years, what this has meant, for where we're going from here, what direction we're headed in. Before I do that, though, I've been doing a little bit of an experiment at each stop. So I'm going to ask everyone who's able to get out of their seats. Stand up, please. Maybe do a little bit of stretching. I know we've been sitting for a while. And I'm just going to ask you 4 questions. And if the question is true to you, so if your answer to the question is yes, I want you to clap. Okay. So for example, if you live in Superior, I want you to clap. Wow. Okay, cool. Next time we'll be a little bit louder.